for half a month. Every day, they lived a life of being hungry, with 3 days of hunger for every 9 meals. Apart from occasionally having a meal of fish, they basically relied on coconuts and snails to fill their stomachs at other times. The crocodile from 2 weeks ago still left everyone fascinated, especially for Robert. He believed that was the key to survival. So, today he led 2 other contestants to search for crocodiles again. Reasonably speaking, Robert's idea was certainly not wrong. However, there were always people in the campsite who thought it wasn't necessary to take such a risk, because the conch meat they picked every day could barely sustain their survival. It had to be said that this guy was completely useless, only knowing how to lie in the campsite and make sarcastic remarks. On the other side, several people had arrived at the mangrove swamp, hoping to catch a big meal before going home at night. As for the remaining people in the campsite, they came to the shore to pick snails. Under the leadership of Anders, it was estimated that they wouldn't go hungry tonight. The laziest people in the campsite were the bespectacled guy and the fat guy. They basically did nothing but sleep every day. This quickly annoyed the other contestants, and it was estimated that internal conflicts would break out soon. Several hours later, Robert and the others still failed to find a crocodile. On their way back to the campsite, they picked up a lot of figs, which would be somewhat useful as snacks. However, when they walked out of the jungle and came to the seaside, due to continuous hunger, Chris began to hallucinate. He was almost back home when he realized that he hadn't brought the figs he had picked. Helplessly, he had to brave the heat and go back to get them, wasting several hundred calories in the process. Seeing that the seawater was now rising with the tide, they had to hurry to the campsite along the reefs. Soon, a 3-meter-high crack appeared in front of them. Robert was agile and jumped right over it. But Chris, at 60 years old, knew his own physical limitations well, so he chose to go into the sea and walk around it. The fierce waves kept pounding his head. Actually, the most miserable ones were the teammates behind him. They had to face the danger with him just for the sake of filming. Half an hour later, the 3 exhausted people returned to the campsite. As soon as they walked to the door, they saw the bespectacled guy lying on the beach sunbathing. Back at the campsite, the other 2 young people were also fast asleep. Robert was speechless about these people. He believed that he should find an opportunity to explain the situation. In the afternoon, the 4 youngest people in the team started lying on the beach to enjoy themselves again. Robert originally wanted the chubby guy to help him deal with the fishing net, but he refused to work on the grounds of his foot injury. Even Sam, who originally sympathized with him, changed his attitude. In the following days, this situation became increasingly severe. Today, the chubby guy was assigned the task of picking firewood, but he just kept lying in the water, enjoying himself. Robert told Sam that he really couldn't stand it anymore and chose to go and have a word with the chubby guy. Even so, the chubby guy still refused to communicate and then started sitting in a corner by himself, complaining about his teammates. When he was deeply emotional, he couldn't help but feel wronged and cry. Robert was extremely speechless about this behavior. In the afternoon, they sat at the campsite to hold a team meeting. Sam said that since everyone was here, they should compete seriously and not let the team fall apart because of one person's dissatisfaction. It was unknown whether everyone could take these viewpoints to heart. Another day passed in the blink of an eye. Robert still didn't stop looking for food. When he came to the shore, he found that his teammates had found something good. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a large, wild cassava root. Under the leadership of Anders, they found a small patch of cassava. The cassava here should be enough for the next few days' consumption, so the 3 of them returned to the campsite with some gains. Such a large piece of cassava meant that they could finally have an extra meal tonight. It seemed that luck was really on their side and couldn't be stopped. In the afternoon, everyone discovered another stingray by the shore. With the efforts of Robert and Anders, they successfully hauled it up. This unexpected surprise excited everyone to no end. After being hungry for so many days, they could finally have some meat. They sliced it into thick, thin pieces and grilled them on stones. Taking a bite, the taste was simply indescribable. Every face was filled with enjoyment. Only at moments when their stomachs were full did the entire campsite experience a brief period of harmony. Time flew by, and it was the 18th day. With the addition of protein, the young contestants also started to get busy. Sam, on the side, even planned to improve the quality of life a bit. He picked up a tree root from around and used it as a stand, then hung everyone's bowls on it, making it more convenient to grab them. At noon, Robert, who was out foraging for food, found some oysters again. Since finishing the meal, he noticed that Sam's condition had changed again. For several consecutive days, Sam hadn't focused on capturing food, which made Robert very worried about everyone's situation. Early the next morning, when they were searching for cassava as usual, they found that the cassava in the field had started to rot and spoil. Under such circumstances, it was definitely inedible. it also meant that they had lost a stable source of food. Back at the campsite, everyone was very disappointed upon hearing this news. They cooked a dinner with the last few pieces of cassava they had left. Next, everyone had to search for new food again. Early the next morning, Robert discussed with his teammates again. He still believed that they should find time to search for crocodiles. As for those contestants who opposed, they did nothing but make sarcastic remarks on the side. Then the three-person team headed to the mangrove swamp again. The place was filled with knee-deep mud, and every step forward was extremely strenuous. Viewers who often watch survival shows all know that actually making a pair of large slippers out of branches would allow them to walk through smoothly. Unfortunately, these contestants simply couldn't think of this method, so they wandered around in the swamp for half a day, and ultimately returned empty-handed. In the end, they could only bring some oysters and figs back to the campsite. However, this was far from satisfying the ambitious Robert. He kept thinking about catching a big meal to have some meat, so he discussed and planned to go to the swamp again at night. As everyone knows, the swamp at night can be described as a jungle hell. Various dangerous and life-threatening factors would emerge one after another, but Robert believed it was worth taking the risk, so he told his idea to his teammates. Originally, he wanted to go with Anders, who had hunted crocodiles with him before, but considering safety, Anders refused him. This made Robert very angry, and he even thought Anders was a coward for a while. As night fell, Robert led Mike and several others who were willing to go out and headed towards the mangrove forest. Needless to say, this action was definitely full of dangers. The pitch-black environment combined with the dim light made it impossible for them to see anything clearly. Although they could hear movements underwater several times, they couldn't lock onto a target after busy work for a long time. Gradually, the teammates began to get discouraged. Only Robert remained firm in his idea. Looking at his teammates chatting and laughing, he had a serious expression on his face. In the end, the several of them still returned to the campsite, empty-handed. On their way back, when passing by a beach, they luckily discovered a sea turtle laying eggs. This once-in-a-century sight left everyone mesmerized. You know, this kind of sea turtle is an endangered animal protected locally. If it was harmed, one would be sued by the court. At this time, Sam thought of his teammate Ryan, who really wanted to see a sea turtle with his own eyes. But to avoid waking up everyone at the campsite, they quietly returned to the campsite. When morning came the next day, since the crocodile hunting mission had failed, everyone felt that it was a waste of time and energy. Many people's fighting spirit had been worn down. Soon, the news of seeing the sea turtle last night spread throughout the campsite. Upon hearing this news, Ryan was very angry because he had already told everyone that he wanted to see a sea turtle with his own eyes. Not only did his teammates not call him, but they also discussed it in front of him. This behavior made Ryan lose control of his emotions for a moment, and then he angrily left the campsite. Ryan found an uninhabited corner and cried secretly. Regarding this behavior, Robert said he couldn't understand it, and instead thought that Ryan was just looking for trouble for no reason. You know, only when a person is stimulated by an extreme environment will the true side deep in their heart be revealed. At present, 13 people have survived on the island for 20 days. In the team, some are still slacking off while others are doing the work. The internal polarization is extremely severe. Since today's secondary netting yielded no results, Robert specifically raised this issue at the morning meeting. Based on the food they can currently obtain, it is far from enough to sustain their dozen or so men. The daily haphazard eating has led to constipation among teammates. Dean by the shore hasn't had a bowel movement for more than a week. According to him, every time he strains, only water comes out. Needless to say, it must be due to the long-term consumption of conchs. Since Sam has some insights in this regard, he said it must be due to dehydration, so he decided to give Dean an enema. As long as the feces in the body remain moist, they can be expelled. Subsequently, Sam found a plastic tube and a water bottle on the beach. The next second, Dean inserted the plastic tube himself. As Sam slightly squeezed the water bottle, Dean's pupils dilated due to the sudden pleasure. After it was over, Sam said that Dean would be able to have a bowel movement soon. So, Dean started wriggling his body on the beach non-stop. When he felt ready, he sat by the shore and gave it a try. Unexpectedly, this method really worked. After defecating, he felt much more relieved. Subsequently, the others in the campsite started their daily beachcombing again. Robert initially wanted to use a rope to pick some coconuts, but due to his heavy weight, this method didn't work. Fortunately, good news came from the shore again. It turned out that the others had found a stingray. Not daring to delay, they immediately hauled it ashore. However, since they didn't have a hunting knife with them, they had to wait for teammates to come and help. At this time, Ryan couldn't sit still. He really couldn't stand this kind of hunting behavior. Since they had caught it, they should give it a quick end. He even blamed his teammates for not acting quickly enough. One might say that people with a bleeding heart shouldn't come to compete in the first place. Seeing this, the teammates started to explain, one after another. If it were someone else, a fight would probably have broken out long ago. Robert, who was standing by, couldn't bear it any longer, and made a veiled remark at Ryan. Fearing that this commotion would lead to unnecessary conflicts, Sam immediately soothed Robert's mood and told him not to argue with a child. Nevertheless, in any case, they could still have a big meal tonight. At this time, Mart, who had been acting as a cameraman, noticed something was amiss. He had long felt that the team was on the verge of splitting up. If no one spoke up, the situation would probably get worse. So, Mart proposed that they could elect someone to be the team leader. This way, it would be more convenient to manage the team. As soon as he finished speaking, Robert instantly became unhappy, because he didn't want to be ordered around by others. In comparison, the other contestants were all in favor of Mart's idea. Without a leader, the situation would probably get worse. Actually, in the early stages, Robert had always been the team leader. Relying on his experience and patience, he often led his teammates on hunts, but he never openly commanded others, so he wasn't very in favor of electing a team leader. Subsequently, Mart asked all the contestants to raise their hands and express their opinions. Except for Robert, everyone else agreed with this idea. Then, Mart asked the contestants who wanted to be the team leader to raise their hands and compete. Chris, Sam, Mike, and Anders all volunteered. They basically each had their own strengths. To understand the capabilities of these candidates, Mart asked the four of them to make arrangements for the upcoming journey, and elaborate on their understanding of teamwork, one after another. In this, they could all speak eloquently. Each candidate was very serious in elaborating on their views. At this time, Ryan suddenly had an idea, and immediately joined the ranks of the candidates. Isn't this guy clearly causing trouble? However, his teammates still gave him this opportunity. Subsequently, it was time for everyone to vote and elect. As for who was suitable to be the team leader, I think everyone must have had an answer in their minds. Through the election, Anders took an absolute lead over the others, and naturally became the team leader recognized by everyone. As for how to lead in the future, we'll have to see. Time flew, and another day passed. Early in the morning, Anders gathered his teammates for a morning meeting, and began assigning them their respective tasks, as this was the way to improve work efficiency. As for today's main tasks, they were still to find new water sources and firewood. As soon as the words were spoken, Robert beside him raised a question. He wanted to first get a few people to haul up the fishing nets. However, Anders firmly disagreed with his idea. Before he could say a few more words, Robert beside him started to argue again. Seeing this, Anders could only explain to everyone. As long as today's goals were accomplished, the remaining time could be arranged as everyone pleased. As for Robert's idea of ordering people around to do things, it simply didn't exist. Seeing that the other party was still blabbering on beside him, Anders gave an almost professional explanation in response to Robert. Seeing this, Robert could only temporarily give up resisting. Subsequently, everyone who had been assigned tasks started to get busy. During the midday break, Robert still couldn't swallow this grievance. At this time, Sam, acting as the strategist, patiently explained to him, getting straight to the point. He said that Robert just wanted to control others, and felt very uncomfortable when others controlled him. In the early stages, he was actually the de facto team leader by default, so Robert naturally had a good self-image. Compared to the team leader elected through democracy this time, a leader like Anders would definitely be more popular among everyone. Hearing these words, Robert finally had an epiphany. It seemed that in extreme environments, quite a few things could change. In the afternoon, Ryan discovered a beehive in the woods, and specifically led 4 teammates to check it out. As expected, there was really a beehive under a big tree. Seeing this, the teammates were all extremely excited, because they hadn't tasted honey for nearly a month. Subsequently, everyone returned to the campsite, brought the necessary equipment to the base of the tree, and lit a campfire. The continuous black smoke would temporarily calm the bees down. Then everyone started to use their hunting knives to clear a path. Just enlarging the hole to the thickness of an arm would be enough. Seeing this, Ryan first his knife and dug out a small piece, took a taste, and his whole person instantly became restless. Subsequently, Anders and the others were also extremely excited. Tasting honey again after a month, this feeling was definitely indescribable in words. Subsequently, everyone was motivated, and started to chop down the tree. After more than 2 hours of hard work, they finally dug out a small piece of precious honey. Returning to the campsite, Ryan announced the good news to everyone. Even those who had always looked down on Ryan were filled with emotion. With food, the atmosphere in the team became much more relaxed. As night fell, everyone smeared honey on the meat, and each person had a piece, simply unable to close their mouths in happiness. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, Ryan also apologized to everyone for his behavior in the morning. After staying here for so long, they were definitely able to grow a lot. Time flew, and it was the 25th day. In the following period of time, under Anders' leadership, basically everyone in the team had a goal. All of them were like being injected with chicken blood, foraging, and working. They even managed to build a boat in their spare time. With the boat, they could place the crab traps in the deep water area. This harmonious scene lasted until the 29th day. Since the challenge was about to end tomorrow, so tonight, everyone also held a bonfire party. As for dinner, it was 2 grilled oysters per person. Looking at the gradually fading bonfire, everyone was filled with emotion in their hearts. They had almost all achieved quite a bit, and had become much stronger. Finally, the day to go home arrived. Bear Grylls also came to pick up the contestants in a small boat. Seeing their idol appear in front of them, everyone was extremely excited in their hearts. Subsequently, Anders introduced their territory to Bear Grylls. This flat area was not only a living room, but also the conference room where the team held meetings every time. Going further in was the bedroom of some individuals. Bear couldn't help but lie down on the bed to try it out. These beds were built by them half a month ago. Crawling into them at night would not only reduce mosquito attacks, but the key was that lying inside gave a great sense of security. Next, Bear Grylls came to the place where they ate and expressed his appreciation for everyone's work. In addition, Sam had also built many entertainment facilities. Whether it was for living or entertainment, everything was available. And the required materials were all recycled from the shore. Bear Grylls was definitely very pleased with this idea. Besides, that was the precious water source on the island. Every time they collected back muddy water, they would filter it in bottles. This device was also specially made by Anders, which could at least remove most of the impurities in the water. Subsequently, everyone specially prepared a plate of a sumptuous dinner for Bear Grylls, filled with all kinds of seafood, fruits, and cured meats. Taking a taste, the flavor was definitely top-notch. He had never thought that. These young people still had some skills. Finally, everyone packed their luggage, extinguished the fire source on the island, and sat on the small yacht to go home, feeling content.